Today we go on to SD 39.9, Chapter 9, Bandhaka Putta Sutta, S 42.6. Bandhaka Putta Sutta. Bandhaka is the name of this person. Sutta, of course, means thread or discourse. In living translations, you find that we often try not to be too literal. Unless we try to explain the terms, then you have to be quite exact. For example, Sutta, there are some people who object to the translation discourse, but discourse has a kind of different meaning, almost the idea of being discussive and so on. But that's the closest we can best get to the word Sutta. Of course, literally the word Sutta means thread. Again, we don't take the word thread in a literal sense. We take the word thread in the figurative sense of something continuing down to us from the Buddha's time. It's just like you blog online, you chat online, if you start a new question or discussion, the moderator may say, can we start a new thread, or something like that, yeah? So you can have the idea thread in your mind, but if you want to speak beautiful, good English, we normally use the word discourse. In fact, there's a problem in China when they translate Sutta also. They just couldn't find a word for it. And yet they want something which is legitimizing. So the best they could use was something that already existed in China, and the word is Qing. But there's a problem with the word Qing, because Qing means classic. It means any text which the ancient Chinese sage or any Chinese master has written, and it is accepted as a classic. And so the good thing is they accepted the Indian suttas as Chinese classics. There was no problem at first, first few hundred years, but then later on, the Chinese, with their inventive minds, started producing their own Qing, their own suttas also, and that created quite a big problem. So then some of these monastic authorities, they started to introduce what's called the bibliographical system, the catalog system, so they start recording what are the authentic suttas and what are not. So these are some of the cultural problems we face in the living religion. Any living religion, once they spread, go overseas, there is some kind of regional variation. So I see, but that is why it's interesting. If we go back to the early suttas, they give us a very clear, simple, and most importantly, effective teaching. Remember, we're studying suttas here to prepare ourselves for meditation. These are texts that sooner or later lead us to meditation. And I'm sure if you're listening to this video, you're interested in some way, meditation, mental cultivation, or this personal development. When we say personal development, when we talk about self-reliance, the word atta is there. And atta means self, yes, but in practice it means the mind. So if you say self-cultivation, we don't cultivate the ego, we cultivate the mind. So this is a preparation for meditation. We're looking at all these are stories, very beautiful stories. A great number of stories about people who met the Buddha, who were inspired to a new life, a life of peace and awakening. So Bandhaka Putta was one such person. Bandhaka Putta is what's called a headman, a Gamani in Kosala, one of the empires of ancient India. His name is very interesting because Asi means sword, and Bandhaka means a binder, what to bind is a sword. So a sword binder sounds rather interesting. So when you put this word together, it means today what we will call a swordsmith, right? Someone who makes a sword. And putta here literally means son. But here we can take, just like in the Scottish name you've got Mac, Mac, son of. So here it can also mean a young person, okay? A young sword maker. This is probably his nickname, Asibandaka Putta. Or we can even translate Asibandaka as a swordsman, a young swordsman, if you like. So these are different ways of looking at the names. Of course, I almost have a sound of uncertainty when I explain to you all this thing. If I'm saying that, wow, we have a lot of choices when we talk about the names. I did not say, this is it, that's it, because I can tell you that we are 2,500 years away from the Buddha now. And the fact that I can sit here talking to you about the Asibandaka Putta Sutta, pronounce it in Pali, is quite amazing already. We are forgetting the Buddha's teaching, just to put it very simply. And in another 1,000 years, we'll probably forget much more. And yet, there seems to be a spurt, a kind of like a sunburst now, where you can really know a lot about the suttas because scholars are doing very careful research. Some new manuscripts have been discovered in Afghanistan and elsewhere. And we know more and more about the scribal tradition, about the texts of ancient Buddhism, and some types of the Buddha too. So in a sense, it's a very interesting time to study the text. The important thing is don't be too worried about whether you are sure about the word of the text or not. The word of the text is a computer program. It's good to have them right, but ultimately we want what the program runs. So once we understand the text, next thing is got to prepare the mind for it. Because if you just read the text, it's like just knowing the program without running it. And yet, if you do not know the program well, you can't run it correctly, it won't work. So it goes like that. So here, let's see what happens with Asibandaka Putta. It's quite a straightforward story here, a very beautiful teaching. Page 169. The discourse to Asibandaka Putta, S 42.6. At one time, the Blessed One was staying in Pawarika's mango grove near Nalanda. Nalanda, is this famous city of learning. Sariputta's city, if you like. And there's a mango grove there. Notice the Buddha will always live in some kind of beautiful countryside. My understanding from the Sutta is that the Buddha does not live in the city. Although there are some big buildings like on the east of Savatthi, this Migaramata's mansion, but these are probably like a monastic building. Lots of space, trees, nature around. If you really want to have the feel of early Buddhism, don't go to the big temples. They're definitely not, they won't give you the right feel of a monastery. Oh yes, they do give you that Sistine Chapel kind of feeling. These are called memes. Some of these linguists use the word meme. Meme means something built big and meant to impress you. When you see this place, this big temple, say, wow, this must be good. People build this, must have good karma. I want to join them. Something like that. That's called a meme. The meme spreads itself. So here is where go to botanic gardens. Go to the open space and feel the open space, the spaciousness, the brightness, the trees, and then sit quietly under the tree and imagine you are back in the Buddha's time. All those more trees, in fact, big trees, and the peace, very peaceful. So you can imagine, the Buddha speaks without a PA system, and yet a crowd of 500 people can hear him. So you have to imagine. My imagination is that the Buddha has a loud, clear voice, and the place is very quiet. There are no cell phones, no airplanes, no trains, so you find the atmosphere is really great. So this background is very important because, in other words, no right-thinking, sutta-inspired, Dhamma-moved monk or nun would build their center in a city, in an urban area. The problem in Singapore is there's no countryside. So we have a problem there. We still have to find a, what you call a retreat, proper retreat center. Maybe in Singapore a day will come when you have these multi-story buildings, and perhaps you will build a retreat center right at the top, where it's the quietest place maybe. Then again you have the airplanes, it's another matter. So my point here is that these quiet spaces in our life are also beginning to disappear. So we have to, in a sense, treasure them, and if possible, go to such places. Build up your inner space. Of course, once you have your inner space, you have attained certain levels of awakening. And no matter where you are, that space is always with you. You bring that space along with you. And people who are near you can also benefit. It's just like here. You come here for that silent spaciousness, to be yourself, to find out, to look within yourself more deeply, more clearly, through the Buddha word. So there the Buddha is really waiting in this space called Pavarika's mango grove. Then the head man, bandhaka putta, or the swordsmith's son, or the young swordsman if you like, approached the Blessed One, saluted him, and sat down at one side. Sitting thus at one side, bandhaka putta, the head man, said this to the Blessed One: Bhante, the brahmins of the western region, those who carry water pots around, wear garlands of water plants, immerse themselves in water and worship fire or Agni, are said to direct a dead person upwards, to guide him along, conduct him to heaven. But might the Blessed One, the arhat, the fully self-awakened, be able to bring this about? That is to say, with the bodies picking up after death, all the world might be reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. Okay, so this is the opening question, quite a long one. Huh? Now there's some interesting details here, but if you have anything, you just stop me and ask. Huh? Number one, the Asibhadaka Putta mentions the Brahmin of the western region. This is of great significance. Scholars say, aha. Because in the Buddha's time, what we know as the central Gangetic plain, the area where the Buddha moves around, is mostly, you might say, that the dominant class there are the kshatriyas, the nobles. They were the uppermost class, if you like. There is this struggle between these two classes, the priests and the Brahmins. Okay, so there was this big struggle, and during that time, the kshatriyas were the one who had the upper hand in the region of the Buddha, especially the kings. They were conquering big areas of land, and the first empires were beginning in Indian history. So these Brahmins, they were kind of pushed to the west, further west, nearer Iran, if you like. So here, when you talk about the Brahmins of the west, we know very well that we're talking about those really hardcore priestly families, these people who are the Brahmins of ancient India. And some of them carry these water pots. This is very famous, their symbol, if you like. And they wear garlands of water plants as some symbol of their holiness. And they love getting to the water, getting out of it. It's kind of regular baptism. Don't be surprised if John the Baptist was one of those people who migrated to the west. It's one of those things. Because this idea of getting to the water, coming out of it, was a common practice in India even in the Buddha's time. This idea of purity in the water. So here, and they worship Agni. Now the word is Agni. Now this is what's interesting, you see. I've translated it simply as fire, Agni. But Agni in Sanskrit is Agni. And Agni, as you know, is the name of a god, as well as the simple word fire. So you can imagine, to the Indian mind of the Buddha's time, when you say fire, If we say fire today, we just say, okay, something hot you cook with, and that's all. We don't think more about it. Of course, you can burn the house down if you don't like. But if you say Agni, even today, to some kind of traditional, non-westernized Indian, you can see a sense of kind of religious feeling inside them. So I spelled Agni with a big A because it's the name of the god they believe. Oh, by the way, Agni also, Sanskrit word, it comes from the same root as the Latin word ignis, from which we get ignite, meaning to light up something. Igneous rocks, which are made from a volcano materials, so it's got to do with fire. It's the same roots. So they worship Agni, the fire god, if you like. And these ancient Indians, by the ancient Brahmins, they believe that this god, or they have this idea of immanence, this god is present in the wood itself. That's how you're able to get fire. So all you need to do is like when you burn, when you strike and stone to the sparks, you're waking up this god, and then he wakes up and there's fire. That's the kind of idea. And the Buddha took a lot of trouble to debunk this idea. For example, he says there's this very foolish young boy. He was told by his teacher to use 2 pieces of wood to rub in fire. He thought that the fire was inside the stick, so he started breaking and knocking and tearing the 2 sticks into tiny pieces. He couldn't find any fire in it. So the idea is to, what Buddha is saying, there's no such thing, and there's no God in the wood. All this fire arose from, as we know today, from conditions. So in a sense, you can see the beginning of a scientific mind in the Buddha's teaching, if you like. The inquiry, experiment even. Of course, the Buddha's purpose is not to teach science. The Buddha's purpose is definitely to encourage inquiry, to ask ourselves the most important questions in life, not to let some book or someone decide for us what is true or what is of the highest importance to us. We have to discover them for ourselves. So this is the philosophical purpose, the theological purpose, if you like, in us searching the scriptures, studying the suttas. So he asked the Buddha, can you do this? Can you do this? The brahmins, they can direct the dead, or if you like, those who are passing on upwards, of course, obviously to Brahman, to this sort of like a sky spirit, if you like, to Godhead, if you like. Is it possible they go heavenly, to a heavenly world, upwards? Can you do that? Can you make the whole world do that? It's quite a big question here. I mean, the one problem with religion is we are really imaginative people. We talk about things we never experienced, things we don't really know, and we believe them to be true. This is one of the very difficult things in religion. And for how many more 100 years or 1,000 years people are going to think like that, I don't know. The thing is, ultimately we have to look within ourselves to see how this mind is so creative that we are able to create heavens and hells and so on. The most important thing is to go back and find out what's the source of all these creations. Why do we think in this way? Now, there are hints of this. For example, there's one mind scientist who claimed to discover a certain part of our brain, which when activated, if you believe in some kind of supernatural being, you actually get into that really profound, blissful state, and you feel as if in the presence of this divine being. And they tried this on some other people, like the famous atheist in Britain, Richard Dawkins. He said, I don't feel anything, just a little tingle in my legs, that's all. So this, in a sense, that there is a part of our brain which is connected with a feeling of immanence, godliness. But whether God decides the brain or not, that's such a big statement to make. The point is the mind is capable of a lot of things. So here, why I'm saying this is because ultimately we got to go back to the mind. So one of the best way to go back to the mind is to go into meditation and understand the nature of our own minds. So here, this young man is asking the Buddha, what about you? Can you actually bring all these people to heaven? So he's not actually interested in meditation at this point. So the Buddha begins his teaching. Notice in section 4, Buddha says, in that case, headman, I will question you about this. Answer as you see fit. Now these simple lines, they are pericopes. You find them repeated again and again. And they're very significant. The moment you see in that case, so you see here is a nexus, a kind of a change, a door. The tone is going to change from the worldly situation which Bandhaka has presented. The Buddha is going to lead him out of it to a higher level of thinking at this. He's going to talk about moral virtues in the first part, about the immoral person. And then in the second part, on page 171, he's going to talk about the moral person. And he's going to use parables. The Buddha uses a lot of parables. And so these parables are very simple, very clear. And in fact, this teaching doesn't go very deep. It's just trying to tell this person what is possible, what is not possible. Talking about what's possible, what's not possible, it's very important to know this. Let me just briefly address it a bit. When we say the word thing, a thing, one simple way of, actually it's very difficult to define a thing, but we like to use this word so often. Whenever we do not know something, we say, what's that thing? Of course, we don't use the word thing for people. But interestingly, in English, we do say everything. When we use the two words that join up everything as one word. And when we say everything, it includes human beings too, includes living beings also. But if you say everything and you separate the two words, then we only talk about things. The question now, what is this thing? One simple definition of thing is limited, has limitations. A thing has limitations. Limitation in space and time, of course. But then again, if you think a little bit more deeply, even this definition is not very helpful because a human being too is limited in space and time, but we are not a thing. Of course, we are living things, so that kind of helps a bit, I suppose. So here, the point of this little discourse is what is possible, what is not possible. When we say everything in the world is impermanent, we can also say everything, separate the word, everything in the world is impermanent too. This is where we don't include nirvana. Because nirvana is not of this world, so to speak. And again, it's also not correct to say that nirvana is not of this world, because you have a problem here. Because the existence of nirvana does not depend on the non-existence of the world. The meaning is that nirvana simply means, in this case, when we remove the causes of suffering, that's nirvana. So it's a kind of end quality telling us we have removed the causes of suffering. To that extent, we have safely used language to explain the nature of nirvana, if you like. More than that, we hazard falling back into philosophy. So you can imagine how difficult it is to explain nirvana. It's not meant to be explained. It's meant to be personally experienced, in other words. If God believers were to take this kind of approach, I think it would be less problems. Then we probably would be much easier to understand the nature of godliness, if you like. But of course, we have lots of issues there. But here, coming back to our text here, so the Buddha says, in that case, said, man, I will question you, right? Notice this idea of questioning is very important. Somehow the Buddha is not in the habit of going around saying, okay, listen to me, I have something to tell you. In this sense, he's not a prophet. He doesn't have that prophet demeanor, if you like. It's more of someone who challenges you to question things. Because it's only in questioning that answers arise. Ask the right questions, you get the right answer. You ask the wrong question or you ask a loaded question, that's all you get. So, I will question you about this. Answer it as you see fit. So here what the Buddha is saying, answer according to your ability. Answer according to your ability. So there's no trickery here. There's no trickery here. Then next the Buddha asks, what do you think, headman? So one moment he asks you, what do you think? You better listen carefully. In other words, he's going to find out your level of spirituality, so to speak. But even then, we can say it's not so much testing you, as rather preparing you for a spiritual journey. Of course, here the spiritual journey begins with the first training, right? First training in moral virtue. What do you think, headman? Here meaning here in this world, since Asibandaka is not yet a Buddhist, you can say here refers in this world. Of course, if he is already a monk or a nun or a lay person, then here would mean in this teaching. So this again, we have to know the context. Ida loke in this world or ida sasane in this teaching. Here a person destroys life, takes the not given, commits sexual misconduct, speaks falsely, speaks divisively, speaks harshly, chatters frivolously, who covets, has a heart of ill will, holds wrong views. Alright? So, the Buddha here is referring to someone of immoral quality. Now, look at this word. Here, a person. So the Buddha is referring to a person. Purisa or Pugala, right? I've written a whole essay on the Buddhist concept of a person. Why? Because you have two things, body, person. Not all bodies are persons. And not all persons have a body. It's quite tricky. Right? So who is a person? Basically, simply we can say a person is able to think for himself, and if he's able to think for himself, he has a mind. And if you have a mind, you are capable of awakening, but capable of becoming Buddha, if you like. Of course, in the legal system, you're a person in order to have legal rights. This raises very interesting questions, you know. For example, in the U.S. history, when people like Thomas Jefferson, they introduced all this, the Constitution and so on, and they say everyone is born free and so on. Every person has a right to property. They had a problem. There were slaves there. So what about the slaves? Are slaves included? They just somehow had to skirt the issue. They couldn't accept the slaves as a person. So the slaves had no rights. The slaves are not persons, they are chattels. So this was a difficult time in US history, world history, like until Abraham Lincoln came. So the idea of being a person in Buddhism is not so much legal as it is spiritual. If you are a person, in a sense, you are capable of self-awakening. Because why? You can think for yourself. But once you hand over your remote to another person, then of course, no more chances. It's going to be impossible. You have to yourself look at your mind, understand your body. That means keeping the precepts. Free your mind, practicing meditation. Then you attain spiritual liberation. So it's a beautiful grand plan, not found anywhere else. So here, just the word person, you find there's a lot of beautiful meaning there. But this person is given a chance to awaken, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he practices the 10 causes of bad karma, or 10 unwholesome causes of action, if you like. Akusala, karma, pacchā. notice the first three actions are breaking the first three precepts. This is a body-based negative action. This person destroys life, takes the not given, commits sexual misconduct. What's the big deal here? Why are these three precepts mentioned first? Well, you notice the first one, the keyword is life. The very first teaching in the 5 precepts is life. Why? Because life is the most precious thing we have. Life is of the greatest value to us. And even in the more enlightened political system, you find they put life first. Life, liberty, property. The right to life, liberty, property. At least that's what John Locke wrote in his works. Later, when people like Thomas Jefferson took over the ideas, Thomas Jefferson was a great admirer of John Locke. He changed the last one to pursuit of happiness. He says every citizen of the US has a right to life, to what's the second one? Yes, to happiness. It's like the third one is the pursuit of happiness. So in other words, they need liberty also, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So you find these three precepts also. Number one, value of life. That's why we should not destroy life. Number two, we should not take the not given, because what are we taking? If we take the not given, we're taking someone else's property. Things which make them happy, things which allow them to live comfortably and so on. And the third precept has to do with liberty, freedom, the right to say no. Because when the third precept is broken, someone's liberty has been disrespected. The person has been violated, raped, molested, and so on. Right? So the Buddha chose the key idea, the most blatant transgression of this precept, right? Committing sexual misconduct, because it means you do not acknowledge or respect someone else's right to say no, someone else's liberty. And then you have the 4 wrong speeches. This person speaks falsely, doesn't tell the truth, speaks divisively, harshly, frivolously. Now these are the 4 kinds of speeches that make society possible, society healthy, happy, and worthwhile. It's all combined into one precept in the 5 precepts, and the truth. Because if there's no truth, then all the first 3 precepts won't work. They're false, not worth keeping. So these are basic values, basic universal values. Then the last 3, covetousness, ill will, and wrong view, these are 3 negative karma of the mind, if you like. So here, although meditation is not mentioned, it's implied here in the last 3 causes of conduct here. Because when you talk about precepts, we only talk about up to number 7 of the wholesome causes of conduct. Once you include the last 3, it includes the mental aspect also. And mental aspects to meditation. So the Buddha says, okay, here is a person who conducts himself badly in terms of the karma of body, speech, and mind. That's another way of looking at it. Body, speech, and mind.